Dust swirled around the wagon wheels as it rattled to a stop outside the sprawling ranch house. The sun beat down like a hammer on an anvil, turning the Arizona desert into a furnace. Elijah Thorne stood on the porch, his calloused hands clenched at his sides, eyes fixed on the woman stepping down. She wasn't the fresh-faced girl from the catalog photo. Her dress was faded, her eyes shadowed with something darker than fatigue. "You're not her," he growled, voice low and edged with suspicion. She lifted her chin, meeting his gaze with fire that made his gut twist. "I'm the one who came," she said. And in that moment, Elijah knew he'd been duped, but he had no idea how deep the deception ran. He'd paid good money for a bride, $500 wired to an agency in St. Louis, promising a young woman eager for frontier life, someone to share the burdens of his vast cattle ranch, to warm his bed and ease the loneliness that had gnawed at him since his parents' graves dotted the hill behind the house. But this woman, Lila, she called herself, carried the weight of secrets like a loaded pistol. Her hands trembled slightly as she clutched her worn carpetbag, and Elijah caught the glint of a silver locket around her neck. "Why'd they send you?" he demanded, stepping closer. She didn't flinch. "Does it matter? I'm here now." He should have sent her packing right then, but the ranch hands were watching from the corral, and pride wouldn't let him admit defeat. So he nodded curtly. "Fine, but don't think this changes anything." Little did he know, it changed everything. Inside the house, the air was cooler, shadowed by thick adobe walls. Elijah showed her to a spare room, sparse with a bed and a wash basin. "You'll earn your keep," he said, his tone gruff to hide the flicker of curiosity. She was beautiful in a haunted way. Dark hair pinned back, skin tan from hard roads, eyes like storm clouds over the mesas. As she unpacked, a faded photograph slipped from her bag. A man in a suit, stern-faced, with a badge on his chest. Elijah glimpsed it before she snatched it away. "Husband?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe. Her lips thinned. "Was widow, then." That explained the sorrow etched in her features. But why run to a stranger's ranch? He didn't press, not yet. Instead, he left her to settle, heading out to the fields where his cattle lowed under the relentless sun. The drought had hit hard this year, wells running dry, grass turning to brittle straw. Survival out here was a daily battle, and now he had an unexpected ally or enemy in his midst. That night, over a simple meal of beans and cornbread, Lila spoke little. Elijah watched her across the table, the lantern light casting long shadows. "What brought you west?" he ventured. She poked at her food. Same as anyone. A fresh start. Her voice cracked on the last word, and he saw the tears she blinked away. Something stirred in him. Pity, maybe, or the echo of his own losses. His brother had died in a stampede 2 years back, leaving Elijah to run the ranch alone. Wealthy on paper, but isolated, betrayed by fate's cruel hand. "Fresh starts ain't free," he muttered. She met his eyes then, a spark of defiance. "Neither are brides, I hear." "Touché." He almost smiled, but as they cleared the plates, a distant howl pierced the night. Coyotes or something worse. Elijah grabbed his rifle, stepping out into the darkness. What he didn't see was Lila's hand slip under her skirt, touching the hidden derringer strapped to her thigh. The days blurred into a rhythm of hard work. Lila proved her worth, rising before dawn to tend the garden, her hands blistering as she hauled water from the dwindling creek. Elijah found himself drawn to her resilience, the way she faced the desert's brutality without complaint. One afternoon, as they rode out to check the fences, the heat shimmered off the red rocks like a mirage. "You ride like you've done this before," he observed, his horse snorting beside hers. She adjusted her wide-brimmed hat. "Grew up on a farm in Kansas. Before everything." Her voice trailed off, and he sensed the wall she built around her past. Betrayal hung in the air unspoken. Had her husband been unfaithful? Abusive? Dead by her hand? The thought chilled him, but so did the growing warmth in his chest when she laughed at the calves' antics. They dismounted by a dry arroyo, sharing a canteen. Her fingers brushed his, electric in the parched air. "Why pay for a bride, Elijah?" she asked softly. He stared at the horizon. "Loneliness is a slow killer out here." She nodded, understanding flickering in her eyes. But as they remounted, a dust cloud rose in the distance, riders approaching. Who were they? And why did Lila's face pale like she'd seen a ghost? The riders were 3 men, hard-eyed and dust-caked, led by a burly figure with a scar across his cheek. They reined in at the ranch gate, demanding water for their horses. Elijah obliged warily, rifle within reach. Lila stayed inside, peeking through the curtains. "Heard you got a new woman," the leader drawled. "Eye in the house. Pretty one, from what folks say." Elijah's jaw tightened. "None of your business. Harlan." Harlan Graves was a rival rancher, always sniffing for weakness, rumors of rustling trailing him like smoke. As they watered up, Harlan's gaze lingered on Lila's silhouette. "Looks familiar. You sure she's who she says?" Elijah waved them off, but the seed of doubt took root. That night, as thunder rumbled without rain, Lila confessed a sliver of truth. "My husband was a sheriff," she whispered in the dim kitchen. "Killed in the line of duty." Tears glistened on her cheeks. Elijah reached for her hand, his rough thumb wiping them away. "I'm sorry." The moment hung heavy, charged with unspoken longing. He leaned in, their lips nearly touching, but a knock at the door shattered it. A telegram boy, breathless. The message: "She's wanted for murder. Reward offered." Elijah's world tilted, but he didn't know the half of it. Hiding the telegram in his pocket, Elijah confronted her at dawn. The sky bled red over the mountains as he found her in the barn, saddling a horse. "Going somewhere?" His voice was steel. She froze, hand on the reins. "You know." He pulled out the paper. "Murder? Lila, what the hell?" Her eyes filled with desperation. "It wasn't like that. He was corrupt, taking bribes from outlaws. When I found out he turned on me, it was self-defense." Betrayal cut deep. Her husband, a man sworn to uphold the law, rotten to the core. She'd shot him in their home, fled west with bounty hunters on her trail. "Why come here?" Elijah demanded, stepping closer. "The agency switched my papers with the real brides. I needed to disappear." Tears streamed down her face. "I didn't mean to drag you into this." He wanted to rage, to send her away, but the emotion in her voice, the raw survival instinct, mirrored his own battles against the land's harshness. "You lied," he said, but his arms pulled her close instead. Their kiss was fierce, born of shared pain. Yet as they broke apart, hoofbeats echoed in the distance. Bounty hunters? Or Harlan's men? That was only the beginning of the nightmare. They rode out before the sun crested, Lila's derringer tucked in her boot, Elijah's Winchester across his saddle. The desert stretched endless, a maze of canyons and sagebrush where survival meant outsmarting the elements. Water was scarce. They rationed sips from his canteen, lips cracking under the blaze. Harlan must have tipped them off. Elijah growled, scanning the horizon. Lila nodded, guilt etching her features. "I'm sorry." But emotion swelled between them, betrayal from her past fueling a fierce protectiveness in him. As night fell, they camped in a shallow cave, the stars a cold blanket overhead. Huddled by a small fire, she traced the scars on his hands. "From roping steers?" she asked. "And burying kin," he replied softly, their stories intertwined. His ranch built on dreams shattered by loss, hers a flight from a love turned poisonous. They made love under the moon, bodies seeking solace in the chaos. But at first light, tracks circled their camp. They were being hunted. What happened next would test their bond to the breaking point. Pushing deeper into the Badlands, the heat sapped their strength. Elijah's horse stumbled on loose rock, throwing him. Pain shot through his ankle, sprained, maybe broken. Lila tore strips from her petticoat, binding it tight. "We keep going," she insisted, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Survival was her creed now, forged in widowhood's fire. They shared the remaining horse, her arms around his waist, a quiet intimacy amid the peril. Whispers of doubt crept in. Was she worth this? But her touch silenced them. By midday, they spotted a waterhole, a shimmering oasis. As they approached, shots rang out. Ambush. Bullets kicked up sand. Elijah fired back, dropping one attacker. Lila grabbed the reins, urging the horse into a gallop. They escaped, but blood seeped from a graze on her arm. Just a scratch, she lied through gritted teeth, bandaging it in a hidden gully. Elijah's hands shook with rage. Those were Harlan's men. He's after my land, using you as bait. Betrayal layered upon betrayal. Harlan, a supposed neighbor, plotting to ruin him. Lila's eyes hardened. Then we fight back. But as dusk fell, more riders crested the ridge. Cornered, and Elijah had no idea Lila's past held one more deadly secret. In the fading light, they hunkered behind boulders, the air thick with tension. The riders, for now, including Harlan himself, called out, "Give her up, Thorne. She's poison." Harlan's voice boomed. Elijah glanced at Lila, her face pale but resolute. "What's he mean?" he whispered. She swallowed hard. "My husband, he wasn't just corrupt. He was in bed with Harlan's gang, smuggling guns across the border. When I killed him, I took evidence, a ledger. It's in my locket." She unclasped it, revealing a tiny folded paper, proof of Harlan's crimes. Emotion surged in Elijah, pride in her courage, fury at the web of deceit. "You could have told me." "I was scared," she admitted, voice breaking. Tears mingled with dust on her cheeks. He kissed her forehead. No more running. As the riders advanced, Elijah stood, rifle raised. "Back off, Harlan. I know about the ledger." Silence, then laughter. "You think that saves you?" Gunfire erupted. Lila fired her derringer, hitting one man. Elijah took down another. But a bullet clipped his shoulder, blood blooming. Pain blurred his vision. He slumped. Lila dragged him to cover, her hands pressing the wound. "Stay with me." Survival hung by a thread. But that wasn't the end. Not yet. Harlan closed in, boots crunching gravel. "Widow Hayes, or should I say murderer?" He sneered at Lila. She stood over Elijah, derringer empty but eyes blazing. "You framed me. My husband was your pawn." Harlan's scar twisted in a grin. "And you'll join him." He raised his gun. Time slowed. The desert wind whispered through the canyons. Lila's mind raced. Betrayal sting fueling a desperate ploy. She lunged, knocking his arm aside. They grappled, rolling in the dirt. Harlan was stronger, pinning her. "Goodbye, sweetheart." But Elijah, summoning strength from sheer will, staggered up, his knife flash burying in Harlan's back. The man gasped, collapsing. The remaining rider fled into the night. Lila rushed to Elijah, cradling him. "You saved me," she sobbed. Blood stained her dress, but his wound was shallow. They bound it with her remaining fabric. The ledger safe, as stars wheeled overhead. Emotion overflowed, love born from survival's forge. "We're free," he murmured. But the desert held one last trial. Dawn brought vultures circling, a grim omen. Their horse gone in the chaos. They walked, supporting each other through blistering heat. Water gone. Thirst clawed their throats. Lila's arm throbbed, infection setting in. "Leave me," she whispered, stumbling. Elijah shook his head. "Never." His comeback was defiant, a rancher's grit against nature's betrayal. They crested a dune, spotting the ranch in the distance. Salvation. But riders approached from the house. Lawmen alerted by the telegram. Tension peaked. Would they believe her story? Elijah gripped her hand. Together, as the sheriff dismounted, Lila produced a ledger. Proof. Harlan's the criminal. The sheriff scanned it, nodding slowly. "This changes things." Arrest warrant shifted. She was cleared. Emotion choked her. Redemption after endless flight. Back at the ranch, wounds healed under a doctor's care. Elijah proposed under the hilltop graves, rings simple but sincere. "No more payment for love," he said. Lila smiled through tears. "Just us." Their life bloomed. Cattle thrived with rain's return, a child on the way. But scars remained, reminders of betrayal, survival's cost. One evening, watching the sunset paint the desert gold, Elijah held her close. "You were running to me, not from," he whispered. She nodded, locket now empty of secrets. In the quiet, their hearts beat as one. And in the end, out on that unforgiving frontier, love wasn't bought or stolen. It was fought for, bled for, and won against all odds. Sometimes, the greatest treasures come wrapped in the shadows of the past.